formerly the emergency coordinator for Franklin County. That's the one just west of St. Louis County, Missouri. He's moved around a lot, and he and family are now living in southern Brown County. If it has to do with Meshtastic or repeaters or any type of programming, Jim's the man.
It's getting deep now.
Yeah, okay, well, you forgot your waiter, so I'll ease up and turn it over to you.
Awesome.
Thank you, sir.
Right. Hey, you're welcome. All right. How's everybody doing tonight? So I'll just preface this. I'm not an expert, so just take half about what I say is true. I have been playing around with Meshtastic for a while. When I first got into it, I built six Meshtastic repeaters that we deployed in Franklin County. They're still running today. That's about 3 years ago. And we've been able to, and from one end of the county to the other county of Franklin County is about 50 miles, and we've been able to actually have pass messages across. It's not always reliable because the terrain in Franklin County is much like it is in Brown County. And the more terrain you got, the more challenging Meshtastic becomes. And so you have to figure out where the premium spots are. It's just like ham radio, right? The repeater sites that are elevations is king, right? The higher up they are, the better your distance is going to be. Meshtastic is going to be that in spades because it's extremely low power. It's weak signal stuff, right? For those FT8 users, JSA call users out there, right? It's a weak signal mode, and it's really ultra weak because you don't have a lot of power going out. However, the signal is like CW. It can be heard and decoded into noise very well. But having said that, there is challenges to it, and we're still trying to dial it in, figure it out. It's not perfect, as most radio stuff's not. But but it is a meshing type of application, and so it's like I call it like an Amish barn raising. Everybody's got to grab their pole and stick it in the air at the same time, or the structure doesn't work. A lot of times in ham radio, some of us, we wait until other people do it to see if it works or not, and then we stick our toe in. Meshtastic's a little bit different. Everybody's got to stick their toe in at the same time, or it's not really going to be effective. And a good example of that, right, in Brown County, because of the terrain, we struggle a bit, right? We had a lot more nodes up. Some of them kind of came down, or we redeployed them as we try to figure out where the best put them because of the challenge that we have. However, in Columbus, they embraced it and put it up, and you guys got about 15, 20 nodes, and I think you guys are regularly across the town from north to south communicating regularly. Gordon and I have exchanged messages, and I live outside of Nashville, Indiana, and we can communicate, maybe not regularly, reliably all the time, but we definitely can do it. We got some terrain in between that we need to kind of solve. So with that, that's a little bit of a primer, and I'll share some of the toys that I have up here. I have more, but this is what I've got. I notice there's a whole bunch over here as well. And these devices, it does matter. If you're looking for long battery life, there are certain devices that are better than others, and it all has to do with the micro controller that's in these things. And so if you want something that's only good for a day, then you'll go with the ESP32 stuff. If you want something that will last, go with the NRF52 microcontrollers that you typically see in the rack wireless stuff. Those devices can run a week and a half on one charge. And with the same battery, the ESP32s are barely going to get you a day. So just kind of keep that in mind. So feel free to ask questions as we go. Again, just remember, I'm not a deep expert here, but I've been playing with it for a while. I will tell you the configuration of your devices is critical. If you If you don't have it configured right, you won't hear anything. And I see that a lot with people that I'm working with. We get them programmed and they play with it and accidentally change a setting. Like one of those two settings that keep you from hearing other people is the frequency slot, because that sets the actual center frequency of the radio. So, for the US, it's generally a frequency slot of 20, and that is 906.875 megahertz is that center frequency. And the other thing is your channel name and frequency, because the combination of that and your encryption key, if you got a channel with encryption, creates the key together. If you're in the public one, you do really need to not let it be blank. Type in long fast with a capital L, capital F in one word. That will prevent you from hearing stuff. Now, they may have it solved in the newer devices, but in the earlier devices, it made a big difference. You actually had to type something in and not just let it be, say, default and blank. Now, the newer stuff may be working. So just take that with a grain of salt. You got to play with it. If you can hear, it's no big deal.
So I do want long fast, or I don't want long
You
fast?
do want it.
Okay, got it.
You do want it. All right. Well, with that, we'll kind of jump in. So Meshtastic. Well, what is it? Well, it's these inexpensive radios, and inexpensive is like most things we do. They can be very cheap. These seed trackers, $40-$50, and they're very good. If your wife can put them in their purse, you can put them in your jacket pocket. These little antennas will go a long way. They're better than you think, and sometimes they can be better than, not this one. This one's really good, but they can be better than some of these other devices, and very discreet. You can shopping malls, sporting events. You can communicate. Highly recommend them. The Seed Sense Cap trackers. Rack Wireless has a version of this. It looks almost identical. They may actually be making them for Seed. Highly recommend those. But these inexpensive radios or expensive radios, this repeater is about $300, unless you order them in bulk, and you can get them down a bit, which is what we did. These are long-range, off-grid communication platforms. Reliable is a loose word. You have to build out your infrastructure, and you have to really think about the node placement, beyond just your home, right? And at repeater sites, things like that, to fill in the gaps. I think with the Columbus, what they've done in Columbus, I'd say it's pretty reliable in that general area. Would you say, Gordon? Oh yeah. Because Gordon works it a lot. He's on it every day. He's waking everybody up in the morning saying, "Good morning," and which is good. It is an open source, community driven type of software. So, they've been doing a good job. They're bringing the Meshtastic stuff along. But I will tell you, it's not perfect, but it's come a long way since we first started. I think when I first started, the firmware was 2.3, and now we're at 2.6. No, 2.7.15. I think is the latest stable beta that's out there. And you can either pair it with with your phone, and that's your texting device. There are some devices. Here's an example. One looks like an old BlackBerry, but it's not. This is a LilyGo T-Deck, and it's got a screen and a keyboard on it. It's okay. I wouldn't say this is the best. It used to be really crappy, but the latest firmware and UI has made it much better. You can interface, a laptop, or a computer, with it via Bluetooth or Wi-Fi or direct cable. And as you can see, there's all kind of radio and options. In the early days, there was like 3 or 4. Now there are there's more than I can even buy. At one point in time, I thought I owned everything that was being made, but I can't keep up anymore, so I'm trying to stop. There's this thing called MeshCore. So MeshCore is also a competing tool that's out there, and you're going to see it a lot, and people get into these debates, which is better, MeshCore, Meshtastic. The routing is different between the two. They both kind of do the same thing, and you can find people out there that swear up and down MeshCore is better than Meshtastic. Meshtastic has been around longer, and because it's been around longer, it's got it's more deployed. And in our area here, Meshtastic is more deployed. If you go to, like I said, if you go to Columbus, there's about 20 nodes there. There's a handful of nodes across Brown County. There's now about 7 or 8 in Bloomington, and down in Bedford, they're putting in quite a bit. MeshCore, while it operates on the same band, is different and it's not compatible. But there's people who tell you that the routing on it is better and whatnot. I have watched some videos where some of the experts are saying that's BS. They're both about the same. So it's just like pick your poison, type of thing. But I would say in our area for right now, Meshtastic has a stronger foothold. If we started off playing around with MeshCore, it'd probably be a different thing. But I think we've got a little bit too far to try to change, because you got to get everybody to change. Most people that come into the hobby know about Meshtastic, but MeshCore is just very new. It's been around like about a year or less than a year. So who knows? It may overtake it at some point in time. When we may start playing around and running a parallel network, shadow network with MeshCore to start experimenting and stuff like that. But I don't want to confuse you, but if you go out on the internet or YouTube, you're going to see MeshCore, and I just kind of want to just do a brief kind of overview, so they are different, but they're in the same band, and they're kind of doing similar stuff, but they're not. They can't talk to each other.
Do they both use the same chipset, and it's just different software?
No, they actually the same devices. Some of these devices you see right here can be programmed for MeshCore. You have to check the MeshCore devices are not as broad as Meshtastic. Meshtastic has all these devices were originally kind of built to support Meshtastic, and MeshCore came along, and they've been trying to make them fit, but not all devices will run MeshCore, at least not today. They probably are capable, but the MeshCore developers have to.
Is it the hop technology that's so much different in the two?
That is what's different. So I don't know if has anybody played around with Arden? No. So Arden is the amateur radio emergency data network, I think, and so it's where they've taken these commercial ISP radios, and they changed the software, the firmware on it, and made them work in the amateur radio bands. And you can run these very wide area Wi-Fi networks where you can do high-speed data over 2.4, 5.8 gigahertz outdoors. That was on OSLR routing technology. Now Arden has since moved away from that, but that's what MeshCore is using, OSLR. Meshtastic generally does it floods, but in the I think it was either 2.6 or 2.7 firmware release, they introduced the next hop routing, if you will. So it floods initially, and if your node that you're trying to get hears you, it passes back the route information back to you, and so then whenever you transmit back the next time, it routes through that next hop repeater to try to make it more efficient. So they're moving in that direction. Is it perfect? And I'm not explaining or doing justice as to what it's really doing, but that's the general concept.
Is it the kind kind of the same thing as a private call when you send it in DMR, where it floods the system till it finds the radio, and then it finally talks radio to radio. Is that pretty much the same sort of
It never really talks radio to radio, but it tries to be more efficient in the routing, at least from the next hop from you. And then from there, right, it tries to route, but it's still kind of flooding. The other nodes are still hearing it and doing it, but it's trying to be more efficient. Yeah. You know, their website's really good with documentation, so you can read more about it to try to understand. I'm just giving you kind of the high level because I didn't study it deep enough before I came here to give you a very good, solid technical answer. But it did not have that initially. So think about it as it's kind of like APRS. APRS without the digipeating capability, right? Where you say, hey, send it from this repeater to that digipeater, right? To get it's just more of a flood. APRS is more flood, right? But like borrow or packet, right? You can use digipeaters to kind of direct your routing. It's a kind of a hybrid, if you will, if that makes sense. Sure. Yeah. So it's not perfect. I mean, Meshtastic is very simplistic, right? But it's got a lot of capability to it. So it is built to be considered long range, right? That's where the LoRa comes from, right? It's long range, LoRa, and the LoRa technology. It's on the 915 ISM band, which is I think it's instrument, scientific, something band. Generally used in factories and telemetry stuff with containers going up and down the highway to pass telemetry. So like these reefers, they can pass information around cooling, temperature, humidity, things like that. There was a record. I used to have another slide here I've taken out, but the record at the time was 254 kilometers. But as you know, that was a mountaintop to mountaintop in a perfect scenario. But just like all line of sight with radios, they will go a long way, right? Even at low power. As I mentioned before, no phones really required with certain devices, but most of these devices you interface with your phone, and it makes it easier, a nice, more fluid interface, gives you more control over the radio. It's decentralized communication, so you don't have to have a dedicated repeater, in place. But they really help when they're high up on top of a ridge or something like that. It helps you get out. You can do encrypted communications. So there's I'm not going to get this right, but there's roughly about eight channels in these devices. And think of a channel as kind of like a talk group. You can have a public talk group that everybody can hear you, or you can hear everybody. And then you can have one with your friends or your family that's encrypted that nobody else can see. And depending on where you put that, you can pass telemetry information like GPS location. The telemetry information is only passed or shared in the primary channel of 0. If you, for instance, if you put your public channel in the primary channel of 0, everybody can see you, they can hear you, they can see exactly where you are. You show up in the node list, you show up in the mesh map, with that. However, if you put your encrypted channel with your family in primary channel 0, then only they can see you. You can put your public channel in primary channel 1. You can still communicate in text, but nobody can see you, and you can't see them. You don't show up in the node list and things like that, but you can still communicate. Oh, you can come on in. Yeah, you're not going to bother us. So there is a little bit of strategy. It takes a little bit of getting your head kind of wrapped around it initially, But that primary channel 0 is the one where the information's passed, and there is a strategy around that depending on how discreet you want to be, right? And right now, I would say generally most of us are kind of running because we're trying to really build out the network, and when you're trying to do that, you want to see where every node you can hear and where they are, right? Because it's important when you're doing that. Once you get your infrastructure more robust, then I think you might want to have a discrete group, or maybe you have a couple of them, right? One's where your public one where everybody can see you, but all of a sudden you want to go silent. You turn that one off. You turn a different one on, and depending on the situation and what your objectives are. Kind of talked about this earlier. Battery life. I'll say excellent battery life, and I did put the pins. Battery life on this has the Rack Wireless 4631 chip in it. Fantastic. This thing will run for a week and a half on a single charge and no problem. T-beams, unless you already own one, please don't buy one. They're kind of cool looking. They run on the 18650 battery. It won't even get a full day because it runs on the ESP32 chip, and they are power hogs. But I mean, they work great. Don't get me wrong. It's just from a battery longevity standpoint, they're not that great. However, and this is by LilyGo, and but the T Echo is by LilyGo as well, but it runs on the NRF52 microcontroller, but it's got a long battery life, so these work really well as well. And so you can send and receive text messages back with each other. You can trace route, right? So you can see how you're routing or connecting to somebody or a repeater tower. You can also see on a mesh map inside the application, where all the nodes that you're hearing, where they're physically located. You can share or request GPS information from another node as well. And then if everything's configured correctly, you will pass encryption keys back and forth. So you can automatically direct message other people encrypted directly, even if it's without setting it up in your primary channel. So, and that's on the public channel side. So it's kind of cool. You can get these things with GPS or without GPS. You can add GPS to many of them. Like the Rack Wireless stuff, it's a very module because those are very industrial IoT devices. So you can open them up and add a GPS, or you can add a humidity or temperature sensor, all kind of stuff. The humidity temperature sensor, I really wouldn't recommend doing that because most of the time you're installing it inside of a box, and so your temperature reading or humidity is only measuring what's inside that box. I think you played around with those a little bit.
Yeah, it's not very stable.
Yeah. I mean, if you had an open air enclosure, right, that was vented, it might be more reliable or give you better readings. But devices that are, in an enclosed case, I think they're going to heat up. They're going to give you a very false sense of reading. So at least that's my take. And then there's also for those who are familiar with ATAC. So ATAC is the Android Tactical Awareness Kit. It's used by the military. There's a military version, and there is a civilian version. So there's WinTAC, ITAC, ATAC. ITAC's worthless. WinTAC, ATAC's good. I'm also an Air Force Mars operator. We use TAC. We're doing a lot over TAC over HF, where we're transmitting the information. And I'll talk a little bit about that later. However, ATAC or TAC can integrate with Meshtastic. Now, it's very limited, very basic on the information it can pass. We've been trying to do some experimenting with it in Brown County. We stood up a bunch of nodes across the Brown County State Park for the Hilly Half. So it's a marathon that they run through the park. There's a lot of terrain. We stood up, Dave, seven nodes I think it was 7 nodes that we stood up from end to end, and we could communicate back and forth. However, we had some settings. I screwed up the settings. I messed up the settings, and I think we overwhelmed the Meshtastic. We were flooding it with too much information from the TAC devices, but we were running WinTAC connected to a TAC server, and we had the emergency, the first responders. We outfitted them with nodes and Samsung Galaxy tablets, right? And we were doing some experimenting. The experiment was successful. We didn't get the outcome we wanted, but we learned a lot from it, right? So we got to continue to dial in the settings. I think, there is a potential use for it. I think it really works well for search and rescue with small teams that are moving around on foot, because that works just fine. We were trying to do a lot across about a 13-mile stretch that we were passing data. So but we were very ambitious in our in what we were trying to accomplish. But I'll show you what ATAC is later for those who don't know. It's a very powerful, but it also can be a very complex tool to learn. But it's good for first responders and things like that. So how does this thing work, right? So Meshtastic, like I said, it utilizes LoRa technology. It's a long-range radio protocol. It's widely accessible in most regions. In the U.S., we operate in the 915 megahertz band. In Europe, it's in the 848 megahertz segment of the band. I think that's right. You don't need additional licenses or certifications to use it, right? So it's great for families, friends that aren't hams. They will operate. You can activate a ham radio mode. I would not do it, because if you do, you're not talking to anybody else. And to get it to unwind the ham radio feature, you got to reflash the firmware, because it won't. You just can't turn it off and it goes back. It jacks up all of the settings in it. When you do operate it as a ham radio device, it does transmit at higher transmit power going out. You cannot do encryption, so you lose that capability. So right now, we've kind of generally have been leaving it operating not in the ham, because we're trying to open this up to more people, right? Particularly in Brown County, we got campers, people moving through, so we see a lot of transient people coming through, and nodes pop up. These radios, as I mentioned earlier, they rebroadcast the message. It's like a parrot. If it hears it, it rebroadcasts it. Unless you're in a client mute mode, there's a lot of different type of settings you can do, and that's even true with encryption. So with the repeaters, when you set up a repeater, you just set it up in public mode. You don't add any encryption. You don't need to do that, because it doesn't matter. So with the repeater, so if you're texting with your family and you're encrypted, the repeaters will still help you, because it hears whatever you're transmitting. It can't decode it, but it just parrots it and moves it along, and the other people can hear it and pick it up, and which is nice. But like I said, it floods the messages as it goes, and that's the benefit to Meshtastic, and that's also the downside. So when you hear critics of Meshtastic, it's about the flooding, and that's why. So I don't know. Anybody go to the Dayton Hamvention? Ever been? Yep. So a few years ago, they stood up some Meshtastic repeaters at Dayton. Well, you can imagine, it's the world's largest ham radio convention. So there's, 25 to 30,000 hams. Well, they're all there. We're all there with our stuff, right? And they found out, they overwhelmed it, right? There were more nodes than they thought there were going to be there, and it just absolutely overwhelmed it. So the Meshtastic development team in subsequent years have been creating a different variant of the firmware just specific for the Hamvention to help mitigate that, because it's that's the problem. With Meshtastic, if you're in a highly dense area and a lot of these things, it can overwhelm and a lot of collisions with the packets and things like that. So, as you see here, right, it says it can support the 100 devices. I think this is getting better, right? They're getting smarter as they continue to develop it. Some of this information I pulled, it's a couple years old.
Yeah, I can actually confirm that I have run 300 devices at one time with no packet collisions at all.
You got 300 devices?
Yeah.
Dude, man.
We started a company called Hydro Events. I don't want to derail, but we sent anything that was a router to client unmessageable, so it kind of behaves that same way.
Yeah.
Without the router repeater behavior. Anyway, I want to do.
Hey, you should be giving this presentation.
We can jam later, but you keep going.
But cool. But that's good to know, right? And so, but the Dayton Hamvention, right, would kind of surface that area or that issue, if you will. Yeah, because that highlighted it. Because I mean, it just everything melted down. Not really, but it just rendered it worthless, right, for the thing. But you can only pair these with one phone, so that is a big thing. I hear people say, I can't see it, I can't connect to it. Well, if you have these devices and you've been playing around with this one on one phone or your phone's paired to another one, you won't be able to see the other one. It only sees the one you're connected to. And so you have to disconnect if you want to move to another one to be able to see it. So just kind of keep that in mind if you're playing around with multiple nodes at your house, which some of us are crazy enough to do it, as you can see. Let's see. Yeah. So I kind of mentioned this already, right? It's in the ISM band. It's 915 megahertz. Also in the 915 megahertz is also generally your water department. So your water department, the meters, reading, they're on the 915 megahertz band. Like in Brown County, we actually have a node on the city tower where they actually have the water department meter. And we worked with the city engineer and we got vertical separation on the tower to keep from interfering. They're operating around 920 megahertz. We're down around 906 megahertz. They asked us to have a 10-foot vertical separation on the tower to avoid interference with each other. So we've been trying to to honor that. The maximum output power, like these things, is very limited, right? These radios are only transmitting milliwatts. It's very low power stuff, but the gain on the antennas makes the difference. And you can have the stock antennas that come with these things are worthless. They're probably about zero dB gain, maybe 1, I don't know. Then you get all kind of goofy stuff, where you have goosenecks. Don't recommend these because this is very stiff, and you start doing that, you're kind of damaging the top of your radio with the power. This is a 5.8 dB gain. It's smaller, but guess what? This one is too. Which one's better? I don't know. But, it kind of depends on, where you are, what you're trying to do. You can get 12 dB gain Yagi antennas, depending on what you're trying to do. If, these are highly directional antennas, right? So it doesn't fit everywhere, but we've talked about, like in Brown County in the state park, we're high elevation, can we have 2 of these, one pointing towards Bloomington, one pointing towards Columbus, and kind of act as a relay with 2 radios. And, so a lot of experimenting we're doing, nothing you can't do. It's a function of money, right? So the entire band range is like from 902 megahertz to 928 megahertz. You start getting in the upper section, at least for our county, the water department's around the 920 megahertz. I don't know where all the water companies operate, if they're all up in that upper piece or not. There are some like 104 channels, and that's what's in the device. It's called frequency slot. So frequency slot 20 is what puts us right at the 906, 875. And that is important, right? When you flash these things, they come in the frequency slot is 0. Now that's kind of default. Now whether it's going to allow you to operate on this frequency or you're operating somewhere lower, I don't know. But generally in the US, you want to be at 20. If you're not set at 20, if you're set something else, you're not on the frequency. So it's just like our ham radios, you're off somewhere else. So that can be a reason why you can't hear somebody. And keep in mind, a lot of times when you update the firmware, it changes the settings, right? And it could sometimes it'll completely wipe the device completely clean. You got to reconfigure the entire thing from soup to nuts. Sometimes it remembers it, and on occasion I have seen it where it will move some of the settings. And one of the things I see where people, when that happens and they need to redo it, and I have to try to help them troubleshoot it, I will find that they're not on the frequency slot at 20, they're back at 0, and they're not hearing anything. So just kind of keep that in mind if you're having issues. It's, the channel name, whether you got an encryption key turned on or off for that channel name, and the frequency slot are generally the big ones that keep you from hearing others around you. Devices, there's all kind of stuff I kind of, shared with them. This board is what's in this device, what's also in this Atlovox repeater. I will tell you, I'm a big fan of the Atlovox, and it's not really, but the guy that runs Atlovox, we've worked with him quite a bit. We've probably bought about 40 of the M1A1s from them. It's great quality. He's given us great customer service, but it's really about the hardware on the inside. I think is best. I think the Rack Wireless is the best boards, low power, highly reliable, more industrial IoT type of devices. Exact same boards inside of the Atlovox. This one, like I said, took a dump. It was mounted on the side of my camper. I've got on my camper, I've got these Techno RV suction cups on a PVC pole, and the wax I had on the side of my camper didn't let it adhere, and over a couple of days in the heat, I got up the next morning and it fell, and I bent the frame. But all in all, it works great. We probably, Dave, bought 15, 20 of these in total.
I think we started out with 6, and then we bought 10 more, and then we bought 10 or 20 of the rock ones.
Yeah, I'll talk about the rock ones in a minute. So if you're looking for something for your home, things like that, these Atlovoxes, I mean, there's Spec 5, there's all kind of brands out there nowadays, right? And, do your research, pick your poison. From our tribal knowledge, these are pretty solid devices. And I think, Noel, you got one. I think, Gordon, is what you got running. Dave's got...
It's a good weight to size.
Yeah. And the way they've designed this thing, it will, this thing flexes. You can mount it, screws. You can mount it to a pole. You can mount it under your shingles. Just be careful. Mount it. Strap it to a tree with like a trail cam. All different types of things you can do. I've got one on the roof of my house that's been running for over a year, all through winter time. It stays topped off around 94% power. What you'll find is these devices aren't real good about measuring the power of the battery. Generally if you're in the 90%, you're good, particularly with the NRF52 things, because you're going to be able to run for days. This has about a 5,000 milliwatt hour. Is that right? Milliamp hours battery in it. that's enough to power this thing for about 3 weeks or so, maybe even longer, depending on the situation. If it's complete midnight, if you're in Alaska, you'll probably get 3 weeks out of it. The Dave calls it the Rockland, but this is really made by Rack Wireless. Rack Wireless made the chips inside these things. It is an industrial IoT company. They make good, high quality stuff, not just for Meshtastic. This is like a side business for them. But they make a lot of devices inside of manufacturing plants that pass telemetry data. And as you can see, right, it's beefier, right? So this solar panel, extremely beefy. It's got a self-heating battery in here. It ended up being about the same cost as that. I will tell you, I've had good luck with this one. It's been outside, been testing. Shortly after these things launched, there was a supply chain issue, and they changed. And it was about the time we bought 6 of them. The color of the devices actually changed a bit. And I don't know if we got a bad lot of supply chain. I know we've had two of them we've been testing at Dave's house where the battery is kind of not functioning properly. One kind of quit and one didn't. This one is working fine. We don't know if the other 4 that we have in the cabinets is the same, so we're getting them out and testing. But the Columbus Amateur Radio Club's got one of these up on the White River radio station tower, and it's been running since last fall, and it's been running just fine. Now it's the exact same model as this one. It's the white one, not the gray one. So don't know if that's really the issue or not. But it works good. What I like about it, you can mount it however you want, but if you need to get into the radio to do it, you just kind of press and it just kind of unclips, and then you can get in the back and then flash the firmware, to it. But the downside to it is you will most likely have to make a mount for it, because the mount on the back, these things are really designed to go on those poles around cities that are about 4-inch diameter. Most of the ham radio stuff we're trying to attach to is not 4 inches, and these hose clamps don't come down tight enough. And, so just keep that in mind. But most of us as hams, right, we jig all kind of stuff all the time. So, but you can see, there's a bunch of different types of devices, and it keeps growing. And I'd say over the last year, the number of new Meshtastic products has just kind of saturated the market. You can go in 1,000 different directions. At the end of the day, it's really about the microcontroller and how long the battery's going to last. So this is the device I talked about. What I liked about I think his name's Matt, right? Matt's the guy that runs this place. He custom designed this whole thing himself, and he really built a nice enclosure on the back side of this. And matter of fact, if you want to build repeaters, he's actually selling the subcomponents now. You can buy the enclosure if you like to tinker and want to build your own. I will tell you, after someone that built my first 6 repeaters, I built myself. It was before these things were available. You can't build them cheaper than you can buy them. You will put $250 plus, and you may save a little bit of money. You do it because you like to tinker, not because you're going to save a ton of money. And it was funny, when I built my first 6, someone asked me, how much one of those cost? It's like, I don't know, because I bought the solar panels one time, and I piecemealed it over a course of several months. And then when I did up my bill of materials, it's like, oh crap, I got $1,000 in these notes. Please don't tell my wife, because she doesn't know. But the single unit cost for this unit is about, I don't know what the latest cost was at the time we were doing it. They were about $305. However, if we bought 10 or more, he was given, it was a 15% discount. So if you're interested in these things, I highly recommend trying to do a club buy, buy them in bulk. You'll get a little bit extra off. And, but we emailed back and forth with him, and, as we were configuring our design and we needed some right away, he was very accommodating, and worked with us. Like I said, I think in total, we've bought about 40 of these, because our county's EMA bought 30 of these, and they actually seeded the first 10 or 15 or so of these to get it going. They were highly interested in getting this out in the county and kind of seeding it, which was really nice. They had some extra money that was kind of contained. It was part of the EMAC, and but the EMAC guy was very supportive, and so they allocated some of that money to us to buy some of these devices and get them out. And we're still trying to get things deployed around the fire departments, and the siren towers and various things like that, so it's a slow journey for us because, again, of the terrain, but to go do something in Columbus, it's pretty good. Now, I'm sure there's gaps in Columbus. It's not perfect, but Gordon lives to the north. We've got some nodes on top of some buildings in and around Columbus. We got some on towers of other hams, and I'm 16 miles away from Gordon, and we're texting, so. Yeah, so.
Hey, Jim, I got a question. So
Yeah.
mount these things up on a tower, they don't really have any cable or any connectivity. Does it make sense, though, to put a USB-C dangling down so you can change firmware or whatever? Otherwise, you have to scale the...
That is a good question, and we have talked about that, because you can get a USB, I think it's an active USB cable. There are certain types of cables, but there's an active one where we've talked about doing that and bringing it down to a box that's locked, right, where people can't mess with it or try to deter. You can, and I'm going to regret saying this, Gordon knows where I'm going with this, you can flash these things over the air. However, don't do it on a repeater one until you really, really, really got some experience. Because if you do it and your device goes to sleep, because the process will take about 10 minutes, and if it's super high up, your Bluetooth connectivity may not be very good. So when you do it, just remember you may brick it, and if you brick it, the only way to fix it is to get to it and reflash it, all right, or take it out of DFU mode. And, depending on how far along the firmware's gone in the process. However, I've gotten to the point now where I flash mine on my roof from my house, because I think in my mind I've got it figured out. I've reflashed the one on the fire tower at the Brown County State Park, but I climbed the tower, set up next to it, because I know I cannot let my iPad go to sleep. If that screen goes black, it's bricked, and then you got to get physical access to it.
What are you doing? Just keep it?
Yeah, you just keep wiggling the screen, and you change it. You do need to change the packet size in your transmit packets to a smaller number to make it more reliable, but that makes it take a little bit longer. I would experiment at home before you try to do one that you don't have good access to. Just keep that in mind.
Well, you don't have any dangling cables.
I had no dangling cables.
So you're considering it.
Yeah. But the easiest, most reliable way would be to have an active USB cable, but you need to figure out how to manage that, right, to keep it from getting messed up and, watertight and all that kind of stuff. But anyway.
So on this, Jim, I don't want to compete with your.
No.
So the ratio of users to the node, it doesn't have to be one-to-one. You don't have to have a LoRa device in a node at your house.
Yes.
And it was just really amazing to watch how this thing unfolded between Bartholomew County and Brown County. And we're like 2 nodes, we've got 2 light areas to have Bloomington to Greensburg connected. And what we did was, I don't think we got property tags on everyone, but everyone that got a Brown County EMA purchased node knows that it's the property of Brown County, but you promised to put it up and to maintain it. And from that seeding, I guess, that created that base mesh, the whole thing just exploded. And people that had towers either made their own investment or somehow they acquired a node and put it up. And it's really amazing to see the coverage of Bartholomew County. Yeah. Jim mentioned we've got a half a dozen or so of these still in the closet. That's because Old Man Winter showed up. As soon as we get our calendars coordinated,
and we need a boom lift for some of the places we need to go.
Yeah, I got access to the brother-in-law for that. So we plan to go around and put one of the nodes on every volunteer fire station. We aspire to work with the water company to maybe perhaps use their structures for some of this. And then that's when we'll distribute these LoRas. We've got 4 or 5 for each volunteer fire department. And my guess is that's just going to supercharge it from there because each fire station group is probably going to multiply their equipment by 10 and that kind of thing. Believe it or not, there's kind of dark areas in Brown County for cell coverage, and so we're hoping.
My house is one of them.
Yeah, so we're hoping that this would help with the next tornado that comes through and wipes stuff out and things like that. But you don't necessarily have to have a one-to-one relationship of LoRa radios to nodes. And as a group, as area, just get folks together, find out who has towers, and get them up as high as you can. And
there's a guy that lives between 3 and 5 miles away from me on another ridge, and he has a node, but it's offline outside, and he just got one of these in his house, and we've been able to communicate back and forth with just one of these. And even before he did this, he had one of these, and we could still communicate 3 to 5 miles away with one of these little things in Brown County. So it is possible. And, I was amazed. I'll be honest with you. I was skeptical of this little thing that looks like a badge card, getting into your office building. And for $40-50, this is the only way I'd ever be able to get my wife to do anything with radio, even though I remind her that the only difference between a ham radio person and her with her cell phone is a computer with a radio. Mine is just more powerful, more expensive. But she says I play with ancient technology, but who knows?
Hey, I got a question. How do you power the one in the fire tower in Brown County? Is it
solar? 100% solar. That's the beauty of these things, is because they draw so little power, and if you have to size the solar panel just right. If you were building one, when I built the original 6, I overpaid. I bought bigger solar panels than I needed, but my theory is I wanted to dump as much power in that battery every single day than I needed to top it off, so that if we got into winter, the solar panel was covered in snow, it would run. And that's all the power it needs. Now, I will say Rack Wireless is coming out with a new module for some of these things that will give you a 1 watt transmit power. Now, I'm excited about that. However, I don't know how that's going to play with solar in these batteries, because my guess is that's going to be better for a location that's got power or emergency power that can, run it. But that may be a game changer at a repeater site that's got emergency power already to really get out better. So it's kind of new. I've just seen them on the internet. I don't know they're even available to get my hands on yet. But I am excited about that. But that is going to require a cable running to a power source. But yeah, I would not shy away from solar and sticking these things up. They will They will, like I said, the 6 I built, solar only, there's no wires connected to it. They've been running nonstop for 3 years in the harsh Missouri winters and still going. So can't complain. Not going to get into this. This is just, I'll share the presentation, so you guys have it. But this is kind of more of the details about this particular device. I think I said this was a 5,000 milliamp hour battery. It's actually a 2,000. The ones I built, the original ones I built were, I put 10,000 milliamp hour batteries. I really over engineered it. That 10,000 milliamp hour battery will run these things for a whole month. And but it also increased my cost, right? So I could probably, instead of 250, probably could have built it for 200 probably to do it. But that's kind of the specs for for the device. And this is what the inside of this thing looks like, right? It's that WAC wireless thing. There's the GPS antenna. The GPS module is. That's interesting. I see the GPS antenna, but I don't see the GPS module. It generally plugs into one of these slots right here, marketing. But this is what a GPS module looks like here. And they just kind of lock in, and then a little tiny screw that if you drop it in your carpet, you'll never find it. Your vacuum will find it. Don't ask me how I know. These were about $109. If you're looking, for one, again, it's really about the type of radio that's on the inside. What I liked about these M1A1s is they got these dice. And so if you have multiple ones, you can open it up, take the dice, rotate around to be A, B, 1 through 6. However, we bought so many of them, we asked Matt would he make us some custom dice to fill in some gaps, because we were going to have F for fire, P for police, and all kind of different combinations, right? Highway department, and he actually did that for us, right? We had to do it and request it, and he had no issues with it, right? And very accommodating.
You said they're waiting for parts to show up from China, so
Yeah.
you had some free time.
Yeah, exactly. Now this picture is a bit dated, but you can see this is what Columbus kind of looks like, and I say it just generally represents Columbus today. There's a few more in here now. This is Brown County, so this is Dave's general area. This is about where I am. We've got some here. We could actually go all the way out to Martinsville, but this was a bit spotty at times because we didn't have any good nodes in this area to kind of bridge. And this is the fire tower. We've since renamed it where it actually, the 4-digit short name says fire. So we've been kind of being a little bit more smart about how we name some of the infrastructure nodes so it makes sense, for where it is. Our initial thing was we called it the BCM, and then we with a number, and the whole intent was Brown County Mesh. Well, then the Bartholomew County guys came along and they adopted the same thing, and then we couldn't tell what was what. So then we kind of shifted to BCA, and then now if they're on a kind of a monument type structure that we could actually realistically name with the short name, we're doing it because it just makes more sense. So
The colors mean anything?
no, the colors are randomly generated by the Meshtastic system. It just you can't really control it.
Size of circles mean anything?
No, yes and no, but the circles aren't what you think. What it is you have the ability to control your location proximity so that you can obscure it a bit. So you can say I'm within a precise, but even if you're precise, you're probably still a couple of miles away. Or you can move it out to where you're 7 miles away. And this concentric circle is basically saying that this node here is somewhere inside that circle. but it has nothing to do with its transmit range or receive range. A lot like when we look at repeater book or things like that, right? When you look at the maps, right? It tries to tell you this repeater has about this range of distance. It tries to estimate it. That's not what this is really doing. And the Android devices, because Gordon does this with the trace route, it's now showing visually on the map how the devices are connected. I don't think it doesn't do it on the iOS app, but the Androids, it's doing it, which is kind of neat. Now, but it still gives you the words, right? It will tell you that if you do a trace route, and it could be 3 or 4 hops, it will tell you connected to that node going outbound through these nodes, and it will tell you the signal strength between each hop, and then it gives you the same thing in the return all the way back. And what's interesting is sometimes your outbound path is not the same as your inbound path. Sometimes it will finds the better path coming back, But it's, and also, there's been more nodes. Bloomington is off this way, and there's probably about 7 or 8 nodes there now. And there's some nodes down this way around Bedford that Rick, I think it's N9UNJ, I think. Is maybe a call sign.
Are they in Indy?
No, he's down around Bedford. Yeah, there's actually some up there. We can see them, particularly when people on airplanes are flying over, and at first it's kind of fun, but then it gets kind of annoying because we're trying to figure out what can we hear, and the airlines kind of screw it up because they just bring everything in. The good thing is we can see some nodes up in Indy. We can see nodes in Cincinnati. Sometimes we can see nodes in Chicago. So it's kind of interesting. So ATAC. So I had this in here because this presentation was we were kind of giving. We're talking to the EMA director and the Oxcom group, and I was kind of explaining what ATAC is. So ATAC is the Android Team Awareness Kit. If it's the military version, it's the Android Tactical Awareness Kit. It was really developed in combat. They use it on the battlefield where they can operators can say, enemies here, friendly fires here. They can drop all kind of points and pins. They can bring in data, but the difference is they're using probably $5,000, encrypted radios that are more powerful to do that stuff. But you can also do basic stuff with Meshtastic, but it is limited. It's a suite of software. With the Android, you can bring in plugins into it, do a lot of stuff. You can bring in ADSB information. You can see aircraft coming in, support aircraft, things like that. You can attach it to ADSB receivers and feed that in. You can even transmit this stuff using, there's applications where you can actually do it over VHF or UHF radios to pass some of this stuff along. The only problem is in our world, most of the first responders aren't ham radio people, right? So they can't really operate on that space. But law enforcement, a lot of big cities, use ATAC for, whether incidents, riots, fires, routes. The Colorado wildfire teams out there, they have a state level TAC server, when they're battling the wildfires out in Colorado, and you can draw fences around the fires here, right? As it moves, you can move that stuff. You can pass data, over RF into these things and attachments, and they can pull it up and do all kind of stuff. But it's pretty cool. But it can be complicated.
It's got a laptop sort of work.
Yeah, well, there's WinTAC for the laptop, and the problem is with the laptops, they don't interface with this very well because the ATAC interfaces with the Meshtastic because there's a Meshtastic plugin that brings this in, and like I said, it can be a little bit tricky to get them all configured. And you got to keep them updated. The firmware changes either in ATAC or your Android device, and ATAC changes and the firmware changes. You have to update the plug-in, or it's not going to work. You know, we found that out before Hilly Half, and I had all the devices, and I was updating one of them. All of a sudden, none of them were working. I'm like, oh crap! And so I spent the next 4 hours updating everything before our event the next day. So it was a lesson learned. Let me jump to some pictures because
Nice video stream, or whatever that was.
yeah, you're not going to do that over Meshtastic. So yeah, I mean, they can do video streams. There's all kinds of stuff in the real world with those professional radios. With Meshtastic, what you're able to do is drop pins or boundaries around a particular area, color code it, icons you can drop, and then you can pass and share that over RF, and it shows up on all the other devices that can hear through the thing. And
You're talking about on the Meshtastic or this?
this is interfacing with Meshtastic and sharing the data. So if you had an ATAC device, I had an ATAC device, we had 2 radios but we could communicate with each other. You're 2 miles down the road. I could send you a text message through ATAC. You would get it. I could put a pin drop and say, hey, this road is closed here. There's an accident here. There's a fire here or whatever. And then I could pass that either directly to you, or I could broadcast that, and all that information, all those pins I dropped on my map now show up on your map. And this thing's got more capability than Meshtastic's capable of transmitting or sharing. So just keep that in mind. But basic pin dropping, texting back and forth is possible. And this is not it takes a lot of playing with this tool to learn it. And just when I play with it enough, think I learned it, and I don't touch it for a month, I come back and I realize I don't even know how to use it. It's kind of one of those type of things. But it's very powerful. It's got a lot of capability to it. But it is, it's pretty cool. And it's one of the kind of the value propositions. If we can figure this out, like Brown County, right? Where it's a recreational area. We got hikers that get lost every year, right? Where they got to go out and look. And the value of that's when they're going through up and down these valleys and terrains, looking for people. The team on the ground can communicate with each other, and the whole world's not knowing what's going on. And if they find something, they can drop a pin and say, hey, everybody come meet me over here. I found something, right? And then they can use the Bloodhound tool, push that, and it'll actually give them coordinates and help guide them straight to your location or position on the ground. So it's really powerful for teams on the ground doing search and rescue. Going through the broader mesh stuff, we've got to dial in those settings more, because if you're passing too much, ATAC's capable of passing way more information than the Meshtastic radios are capable of transmitting, and you can overwhelm it and nothing gets out. And that's kind of what happened to us during the Hilly Half, right? We learned the hard way, but it's part of the process, right? So that's kind of really it. Hopefully what I said made sense. Hopefully I didn't talk too much or too fast. Probably did, even for a Southern guy from Tennessee. I can probably talk too much.
You want to mention Meshtastic.org so that
Yes.
does everybody here know about that?
Yeah, so the main Meshtastic website is meshtastic.org. That's where you'll find the documentation. That's where you'll find the firmware updates. They've got a web flasher tool that works very well. It gets better and better. In the early days, some of these devices was kind of complicated to update. Now, for the most part, it's pretty relatively easy. At least when you play with it more, you would view it as easy. But that's probably the best source. That and YouTube videos. if you're a YouTuber likes to go, you can go to the comms channel. Now I will say that's where I learned a lot of this stuff in the early days on the Meshtastic. Now he's one of those that's now jumped to MeshCore. They're down in Tennessee and kind of down where my wife's from, and so they're now playing with MeshCore and going that route. So just kind of keep that in mind when you go out to his website. But there's a lot of places. But I would say if you look at his early stuff, or Meshtastic specific, because the concept or premise hasn't changed, and those videos are about a year or two old, but they're still very relevant and will give you a good, deep understanding of what's going on. So how many here's got Meshtastic devices or radios?
Do they have any here in this county? Nodes?
Do what?
Is there any nodes in this county? Nodes?
Yes, a few.
Because I didn't see it on the screen here.
Well, because that picture on the screen.
Yeah. You got one?
I got one on my garage.
Okay.
And I've got a couple that I want to get spread out, and I got a pile right here we're about to put in people's hands.
So at the one on your garage, how far out does it work? And I mean, how high is it? 15 foot, 20 foot?
When I first got involved with Meshtastic, I actually took their firmware and created a custom version of it for something completely not Meshtastic, but it worked great for my use case. And I was testing for my garage on South Jackson Street down here in North Vernon. And so I could communicate between there and Walmart, no problem. And that was using those crappy little 0 dB antennas, you know.
Yeah.
And and taking into consideration there was no activity in North Vernon at the time that I was aware of anyway. There may have been, and I was also on a off frequency channel. So a lot of things were in my factor because there's a lot of stuff between my house and Walmart.
Yeah.
And very low altitude.
Yeah. I would say it's just like ham radio stuff, right? Line of sight's king. Anything in between is going to be bad, and if you're too low, the curvature of the earth, right, the Fresnel zone is working against you, so you need altitude, right, to get over the curvature of the earth. Kind of to your point, where it sounds like you've kind of been doing some custom development of some things. There's a lot of cool things you can do, so I don't know. For those of you that probably play with JS8 call, things like that. And we've been doing some things around, I have a core group of guys back in Missouri. Some of them are software developers by trade, with work. So that's to the benefit. But they have created, they've taken the Meshtastic software, and so I don't know if any of you know what GhostNet is or things like that from the S2 Underground. There's some nets or Amron that transmit stuff on JS8 call information. We're able to glean. We have some radios that are just listening, pulling this stuff out of the air, and then with certain triggers will then take that, package it up, send it out over a private channel on Meshtastic, out over an area. And so it's feeding news information that's coming across those on these certain frequencies. They're not the normal JS8 call frequencies. They're off channel frequencies, and we can glean information like what's going on in the world right on Thursday nights. The GhostNet fires up and they share a lot of stuff. Well, we can strip that off JS8 call, automatically feed it, through a computer and go out over Meshtastic on our private channel. So,
What do you need to do to get to hear Columbus?
We need a couple of good nodes like that one with some altitude. My dream for us here is I'd like to get 2 nodes on the water tower right here by where CBS used to was, and one on the 2 nodes there with a Yagi pointing back towards the water tower in Vernon, and then just find some other good high locations where we can pair up some nodes and use Yagis to get. And that might not even need to be necessary, but it will definitely work, get the job done.
Yep.
So doing something like that, getting some altitude, getting them pointed at each other, hearing each other good, I think from there we can grow out, because I'm already hearing. There was a couple of nodes that you had up there that I can see now occasionally, they pop up. It's probably a propagation thing because I don't have that much. Yeah, that one on the very,
The BCM7?
it's one of the aux columns. That's either the one on the right or the one.
Yeah, there's one here at the den. There's one here, BCM 8, and then Noel's BCM 5.
BCM7's out there at Hartsville.
Yep, that's Tom, right?
So I've been in and out of this a little bit over the last few years, so I'm glad to finally hear some people be in a group where you're using it. So in Columbus, do you have an estimated cost of what you have right now set up in Columbus?
No idea, man.
Now, most of that in Columbus,
Is it 100? Is it 5,000? Is it 40?
How many nodes?
Yeah, so how much money involved in the whole network?
well, in Columbus, there are only 4 nodes that are up. There's the Columbus Radio Club on the White River Tower that they put up. That's one of these. So say $300, and then there's 2 of these that are say $300. All the other nodes is individuals have done that themselves, right? So all of this is
In their living room, does that kind of work?
yes. It can because sometimes the repeaters that are higher up can pick that up and hear it and move it along. So what I'm saying is all of this is not an investment from the radio club. The majority of these dots is individuals just like us in the room that bought a node for themselves, and some of these could be a $50 node. Some of them could be one of these outside on their TV tower or
And you want to think about your strategy too. Like Noel's house is really good because he's across the street from North High School, which has a stadium and everything else. So if there was a staging area, he is in between the airport and North High School.
Well, that's my next question. A staging area for who? Who's actually using it
Anyone
in
can
Brown
use it.
County and Columbus right now? Is it emergency personnel? Is it the public? Is it hams? Is it?
So all this is set up as public. However, the driving force for us in Brown County was the EMA director had an interest in it. We communicated. We shared some use cases with him. He got behind it. They had some money and they seeded. And the intent is to have a backup emergency communication that can be used. And so the way we've set it up is the public can use it. However, if we needed to use it, whether for ATAC, doing this stuff, we can actually do that simultaneously over encrypted channels, and the world can't see that private communication, with the first responders, as we're using. Now, is it deployed and actually used by them today? No, but we're doing that initial experimenting. We're working with them as we do these events or parades and things like that. We're starting to work with them, deploy it, as we learning to see how it can be used. Like the city of Nashville, coverage can be great, right? Particularly once we get the node that I bricked back going again. When you start getting out across the terrain, with hills, it gets much more challenging. But Columbus, it's very good, right? And so they could actually use this for stuff. But however, just keep in mind, it's only going to be really good for short text messages, except for the fact with ATAC, that's a whole different ball game because more information can be shared and passed, over Meshtastic. So it's a blend. I would say it's a lightweight use for for the emergency management. It brings some capabilities that are lower cost than they can go out and afford on their own, right? Small county EMAs have no money, and you take an Android device running ATAC in one of these devices, you can have a SAR team outfitted, relatively inexpensive for a very small purpose-built application. If you're running a large-scale disaster, with 50 of these nodes, Meshtastic's probably not going to be the best use case for it in that scenario, right? That's where you need to get up into like the Beartooth and those other type of radios. But those things are, the radios themselves are like $2,000 plus. And these small counties just don't have that kind of funds.
If you go back to the Eclipse, I think our director was intending on us to use Mesh as a backup way to get messages to and from the volunteer fire stations in his office, because they were expecting all these people to come to Brown County and they thought they were going to overload and jam the cell system. Okay. The other thing we did, Jim mentioned the hilly half. We put up these masts, these nodes on these military masts, and we had 7 people strung along the path. So I was setting at 1, monitoring my sheriff's radio. I was monitoring our amateur radio repeater, and then I had the tablet in. And so our goal would have been, if a runner went down or we needed medical, we would have been able to give a very precise location for the ambulance to get right to that person where they were at. And that was the intent of using that system. And it was a backup. So the mesh part of it was a backup. So if we couldn't get them on the amateur radio, or for whatever reason my sheriff's radio at my station, you guys didn't have sheriff's radios. But the whole intent was to use it as a redundant way to say, I need help and I'm looking at the person right here, go to the primitive camp area or 500 yards to the north of that type of thing.
Is there a website to find a map like that? How do you get that map?
Yeah, that map is actually in Meshtastic. That's the Meshtastic app. Now, I took this picture. I had the Meshtastic app on my iPad, right? So it's a much larger form factor, and I just snapped a photo of it, right? So that's how I got that.
So did you use the Meshtastic during the eclipse, or was it just sitting there waiting?
It was sitting there waiting because guess what? Nobody came to
You didn't use
Brown County.
it.
There wasn't a million people.
And then at the hilly half, nobody was injured or nobody needed any medical assistance. So
Yeah, the hilly half for us was really, we're the proof of concept, right? Where we're trying to dial it in to see, how valuable of a tool. The first responders, we probably outfitted 4 or 5 first responder teams, with it. We had a command center, running all this stuff. We had Yagis. We had these nodes pushed up on masts 30 feet in the air along the route. And we had to overcome a lot of terrain in the park as well. And
because he was down in a hole at the start, and then you had to go up train, and then there was a flat area with channels.
So if you're familiar with the Brown County State Park, the start of the race was near the Saddle Barn, which is down in a hole along 46. And then you kind of step up part of the way at the Abe Martin Lodge. So the park manager allowed us to stick a node out. We stuck a mast up right out by the flagpole on the back side of the Abe Martin Lodge. And that bridged us up to the top, to that first scenic vista. We had a mast there with a node. And then that allowed us to bridge to the node on the fire tower. Then we had another node on a mast set up at the DNR maintenance yard, and then another one at the campground entrance to the big campgrounds. And then we had another node on the far end out by the Civilian Conservation Corps camp. And so with Meshtastic, we were able to relay and see all of those. When we interject ATAC in, because you've got to get those settings just right to limit the amount of data that these devices are pushing, and we had that off.
How does simplex radio work there in the park? I've never tried it.
Well, if you're along that top ridge, it works pretty well, but we have a repeater in the park, so then the coverage is pretty good. I mean, you can get in some valleys where it doesn't work. So if you're down around the saddle barn, if you're kind of back up where that little pavilion area is, sometimes you can, the repeater gets kind of hard. You got to kind of stand on one foot and right.
I mean, if you guys have an event down here, we've got bags of these poles now. I bought 2 myself. You've got 4 or 5. If you've got some event that needs some coverage, we can loan you our gear and you can get some experience with it. If we do what I heard back here, though, if you get them up high enough, you'll have one node cover the whole county. If you get it up there a couple hundred feet high.
I've got the parts to build another rack node. I just haven't done it yet, but I've got 2 fairly inexpensive nodes. I've got way overkill on the battery side, but I think they're 4 or 5 watt panels. One of them's on my garage, and when I find a better spot for it, that's where it's gonna go. And then I have one just like it, sitting there doing nothing.
So pro tip.
That needs a home.
Pro tip. So what boards are you using? Are you using the rack wireless boards?
In those, I have Heltec V3s with everything turned off in remote management. But you can fine tune them, so you have to go and kill on the battery.
Yeah. I'm not familiar with
that. I have one rack.
Yeah, the reason I'm saying that, because I don't have much experience with the Heltec. I just got the one little small one. I haven't done much with it. But the rack boards, they have the built-in solar charge controller. They're pretty lightweight. But if you go to Adafruit, you can buy these little solar charge controllers where you can configure it to be either a half watt, half amp, 1 amp, or 1.5 amp charge. So when I built mine, I used that in lieu of the onboard solar charge controller, so I could use a larger panel to dump more power into the battery. So and those things were only like $8 or something, so they weren't very expensive.
Well, when you say it's battery hungry, though, what's the advantage over this one? Does it actually work better?
Not in most cases. It's the difference in the microcontroller, like you was saying earlier. The Heltec V3 and now the V4 that'll do 1 watt. They use the ESP32/S3, and it's just a power hungry controller. But particularly when you have because it'll do Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. It won't do them both at the same time. But if you have either one of those things on, I mean, it takes it. So in most cases, the best use for a Heltec V3 is over serial with a device or using your computer and keeping all that stuff off. And if you need to go mobile, turn Bluetooth off. And there's a couple things you can tweak in the app to reduce your power consumption. It's just a particularly power hungry board.
Yeah.
Jim, you might want to explain that little black box there on the edge
Yes,
of the table.
thank you.
And tie it in with why they might need one if they're going to put a node up on White River Broadcasting Scipio.
Yes, but before you start on that, since I'm the tagline treasurer, so we put one of these up 300 feet, you gotta pay somebody to climb up there.
Why?
Insurance.
We didn't.
I can tell you how to work. Okay, never mind. Don't ask, don't tell.
That's a good policy.
No, that's a good thing, because we got sideways with an individual that was doing some things. And so when we formed this OxCon thing, we've been working with the directors to get some SOPs and some things like that. And I think
the
we
core of
asked
that
you.
question was how often, I mean, we can just put it up there and leave it, right? I mean, 'cause
Once you get it up and you.
firmware, is that something that needs to be done on a regular basis?
You can go a long time. We went 2 years without updating the firmware in Missouri, and it lasted a long time, right? So you don't have to chase every firmware coming out. It's more about looking at what the firmware, the change log of the firmware, what features is it bringing, and is it a feature that you feel like you must have?
Right, man. See, I'm a huge upgrade fan because every time I upgrade firmware, I gain something, but I lose something.
Yeah, so
I
yeah,
would
electric
recommend though
heaters.
that you take your node and put it on the ground, let it run for
Yeah,
a week or
burn it,
so,
yeah.
to make sure it's
Yeah.
running, because both Noel and I have had to go up a couple times because we thought it was working and then it wasn't.
Yeah.
Brand, yeah.
So for those who are amateur radio people, right? So you know what cavity filters are, right? With the repeaters. I don't know how many people here is not hams. But with Meshtastic, you can get these things. And I finally got my hands on them and I went crazy and I got 5 of them because I'm crazy. But I tried to get these things for a year and a half and they were just unavailable, right? The whole tariff thing, supply chain issues. But these are bandpass filters, so they're notch filters. So what it's doing, it's notching out all the frequencies north and south of 906.875, right? So that these radios only hear the signal on that frequency. And for your home, you probably don't need one of these, right? But if you are going to put a node up in an area that's got a lot of RF, you might want to consider these things. These things were $200. They're now about about 120 now, I think, ish. I mean, none of this stuff's cheap, right? But if you need one, it's cheap. As Noel was saying and Gordon. So we put one of these nodes up, the solar panel on a mount that we made. It's on the White River radio station in Columbus. So the tower, I don't know, the tower's about 300 feet tall. I think we're about halfway up with one of these nodes. However, that's an FM radio station transmitting. And what we discovered is that even though it's not on the same band, that RF is it's very powerful. It's desensing. Yes. Yeah, and so basically what's happening, it transmits out fine. I can hear it all the way to Brown County, but it doesn't hear worth a crap. And it's because we believe they put one on down near Bedford on another radio station tower, and they're experiencing the same thing. So the theory is the RF from the radio transmitter is overwhelming that little small radio. And so we actually put a bandpass filter, a single cavity bandpass filter on the, I think it was a single cavity, not as good as this one, on it. And we thought maybe that was giving us way too much attenuation and was causing the problem. We took that filter, Rusty climbed back up there, took it off, and all of a sudden that thing didn't hear anything, and so our conclusion was the bandpass filter was helping. So this is a notch filter, so it's actually going to, we're hopeful that it's going to give us even more noise reduction of that RF going into that radio and allow it to hear better from longer distance, because that was the problem. We can see it out a long distance, but it can't hear from very far away. And so we're hoping by putting this in line, it's going to give us that noise reduction that we need to make it better.
That's tuned out of the box.
It's tuned out of the box for 906.875.
Heck yeah.
So what's the insertion loss on that?
That's a good question. You would have to ask that question, wouldn't you? I think it's one. I think on this one, I think it's 1.5. Yeah. I got to confirm it, but I think that's correct.
Copy of our liability insurance.
But,
Yeah.
so anyway, that's all I got. I don't know if you guys had other topics. I may have consumed your.
I would like
meeting.
more information on that, just whenever, it's not for right now.
Yeah.
We get situated to put one on the tower, we'll definitely need one.
Yeah. Give me your email address and I'll send you a link. It's a company called Airframes, that's making, they're sourcing them and, you know, doing all that stuff. They actually have these for other frequencies as well, right? For people that are going on a different frequency, and they've got them for them. They're starting to make them available for the mesh core frequencies as well. So mesh core does not run on 906. It runs more up around 910.
Well, I think it's gonna make more sense for us to stick to what you guys are doing. All of this stuff is on channel 20, everything's on channel 20.
Yeah. Frequency slot 20.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you wanna give away these devices now and then do the treasury report and all that stuff?
Yeah, let's do that.
Does everybody have a ticket?
Any other questions? You know, everybody was good about asking questions along the way. I will give a disclaimer, I'm not an expert, so anything I gave to you today that's incorrect, I'm sorry. I do this for free.
All right, this first node is USB only. It's one that I tested with and I blew up the USB port on it, so. But it still works great, just if you need to plug a data cable into it. You wanna do the honors?
Oh, sure.
$28. Yeah. Let's see here.
Should we get him to handle mesh man? Mesh dude?
It's kind of cool. When you play that
Power supply.
This is just on off.
No, it's called a C indicator. And it's got a nice screen on it, but it's good for desktop, but it's not much functional.
Come on, Ben, give him a brother.
I'll go a little bit quicker. 33. Anybody have 33?
Nobody wants it.
I have more tickets than people and put them all in there. So.
They're more interested in this.
42.
Right here.
First drawing, nobody says they got it right. I've never seen the lights.
We can talk.
47. 47. All right.
Good.
And some of these have batteries that have been through hell and back, so. Before
How
warned.
much is your
40?
Here.
Dave, I wanted me to get my unit up. We'll get her down. I'm anxious to see how much of the money cards go in Greensburg and all that.
27.
You gotta be able to get the Tom.
27.
We shall see soon.
49.
Those fours in?
All right. There you go.
Cool. Thank you.
Well, I set one of these up for EC. It was gray.
I can take it to him.
How's he doing, Mark?
He said to thank you all for the prayers and support. After that chemo hit him, it knocked him down pretty good, but he's bouncing back a little. He couldn't come here tonight because they said his immunity would be down.
26.
Can't kill them really.
Trying.
That's been the presenter.
48.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I'll use it privately.
Did you say you'd use it privately?
Proudly.
Oh.
Privately.
I said
50. 50. Sir.
Everybody's going to go home.
It's already gonna Jennings County did.
43.
43?
That,
What'd you call that? 7.
Like you need another one.
you know, doesn't hurt. Work,
You guys.
38.
Always told me that way. This one will probably go on Rachel's desk at school. That way, you know. See,
This one's working.
outside. You know, thick wall at school.
That Conn's building where I work, it's like a Faraday cage.
That's what I'm afraid of where she's at. I have to put one in her car and have this one inside the building.
Okay.
Just confirming, that is the power battery, right?
Yep, you should reset. And if you want to turn it all the way off, you can.
Well, I'm trying to get it to turn on without battery. It's not one to turn on for me. I was hoping you could tell me what I'm doing wrong. It was working when you handed it to me, and
The battery might be a questionable one. It's 18650.
it's saying it's 100% when I plug it in. Yeah, when I plug it in, that's why I couldn't figure out. I was like, what am I doing wrong with this thing?
So Rusty did do that, call sign. When he got his.
Yeah, I know.
Flash, but I didn't wipe it first, thinking I should wipe it.
If it's having issues,
We can pull with it later. I was just curious if you could tell me real quick.
All right, this one apparently has a bad battery. It's where it's working over USB. I got some batteries over there, so whoever wins this, I'll give you a new battery for it. 35.
Link to that one?
There's that. And I know that is a good battery.
Oh, perfect, thanks.
you work for Signature or you a pilot or?
Oh, me?
Yeah,
I do fly, but yeah, I don't work for Signature.
yeah, I'm a pilot as well.
Are you? Small, big?
Small.
Small, yeah.
Yeah, before moving here, I owned a 182 with 9 other people. It's the only way to own an
No,
airplane, right?
not as well, but my gig is more civil,
Yeah.
which relates a lot to this stuff. We've got
Yeah.
repeaters that we use.
Well, it's funny, right? You know, I have my commercial ticket and all the radio stuff that you have to learn, right, with your instrument rating and all that stuff, just kind of led me down this path.
That's the having some radios.
Crossover everywhere.
Want to do a treasurer's report?
Oh, yeah, this is our official meeting. Call the meeting to order, 442607. What did we do for notice, we had the Meshtastic meeting tonight. Chris and I went up to the tower site, did some work, got a new clock battery in the Archon controller, found out that it doesn't want to let me reload the data file into it, but it's still working, so who cares? And we got some resolution to that. We've got a couple guys in Indy that are going to get us set up with All-Star on the VHF repeater, and eventually have a link direct into that as well. And Central Indiana Skywire is working on going through the All-Star network as well, so we'll probably have the equivalent of a direct line into the NWS stuff there for the ice repeater. That's all I got.
Will you lead us in prayer for EC?
Lord, we lift up our good friend, EC, just asking you to place your healing hand upon him, to see him through the serious irritation of the treatment that he's receiving. And eventually, Lord, we'd just like to have him back whole. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you, sir. Thank all you guys from Brown County, Bartholomew County, Noel, for putting this together. This is a lot of fun for me personally.
so
Hopefully it was of value, you know, to everybody, so.
Yeah, I have big ambitions to get a good mesh going in Jennings County. I think we can do it.
yeah.
We do our part. All right. Meeting adjourned.
Yeah, I'll second that.
What about a drone? What about a drone to get out?